Hey y'all, welcome to Geeking Out, the podcast about all geeky aspects of software delivery, DevOps, observability, reliability, and everything in between. I'm your host, Adriana Villela, coming to you from Toronto, Canada. And geeking out with me today, and you know what? I did a really crappy job because I forgot how to ask how to pronounce your last name.
It's so difficult that you'll butcher it. I don't mind, seriously. So do your best. Like take a
okay,
stab,
try me.
and try your best.
Okay. Oh, like you're not even going to give me a hint?
Go for it. Go for it.
Oh, dude, that's mean.
The hint is I am from the Balkans, so Eastern Europe. So that's the only hint.
Yeah, so exactly. I don't know how to pronounce the funky accents any more than most people don't know how to pronounce the weird Brazilian accents. So basically, geeking out with me, I have Adnan, whose last name I cannot pronounce. No, I'm going to try. Hang on. That's so mean.
That's fine. Hey everyone. My last name is pronounced Rahic, which is the C with the thing on it is like a CH sound. So it's basically, if you're Eastern European, you'll basically know. If you're anything else, you would have no absolute clue. So yeah. Also funky because my name is Adnan, which is Arabic, and I'm white. So that's kind of strange as well. But yeah, that's just being Bosnian. We have a lot of different cultures here in the Balkans, and yeah, super proud of that and happy to be here as well. So I've known Adriana for a couple of years now.
We are KubeCon buddies.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Yeah, I'm actually super excited to meet up with you at KubeCon in Paris. Super stoked.
Yeah, same. It's gonna be great. I have never been to Paris, so
I went when I was a kid with my parents. So I was 18 or 19, I think, at the time. And it's different when you travel with your parents. So I guess I wasn't like a kid, but I traveled with my parents. So it is going to be a different experience compared to like not traveling with my parents.
Yeah.
But I mean, like when I went, I enjoyed, the touristy things. I'm hoping I can do some more kind of like off the beaten path sightseeing in Paris this time.
We need to figure out anybody that speaks French and just meet up with them so they can take us around.
Ooh, I speak French.
Oh, right, Canada. Oh,
Canada. Yeah, my high school, because I went, so, okay, Canada is technically a bilingual country, and I will put it in air quotes because, yes, we are a bilingual country, and you look at the packaging for all of our, products, and it's bilingual. But realistically speaking, the further west you move from Quebec, the less French you speak in school. So, like, it's mandatory in elementary school, but it's like, it peters off the further west you move. So I was lucky enough to have gone to high school in Ottawa, Canada's capital, which is a very bilingual city. And so my high school had like kind of they had an immersion program where they had different levels of immersion. So you could do like full immersion or half immersion. So in high school, I did half immersion for like, I think 2 years. So it meant like half of my classes were in French. And one of my classes that was in French was gym class.
Wow, that was a smart move, right?
Yeah. But for me, like picking up French wasn't so hard. Like I moved to Canada when I was 10, and picking up French wasn't terrible because I speak Portuguese. And so I found a lot of parallels between
Latin
French
languages
and Portuguese.
Generally easier, right? If you speak one Latin language, picking up another one is easy. Same with the Slavic languages here in Eastern Europe. I have a friend who's from Czechia, and she picked up Bosnian in 1 year, and it's crazy.
That's so cool.
Yeah. I mean, having a Bosnian boyfriend helped her as well.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, but still, it's doable, right? Like, so if you speak any language from Russian to anything here in the Balkans, it's so similar that you can pick up a lot. So I imagine it's the same. I have actually two of my coworkers. One is Brazilian and one is Argentinian, but this Brazilian guy lives in Argentina, and he speaks Spanish and Brazilian. Brazilian, what the hell? Portuguese, right? He speaks Portuguese, and he
Yeah,
like
yeah.
switches between them fluently and seamlessly, right? So I think that's really, really cool.
That's very cool. I find like as a Portuguese speaker, understanding most Spanish words is fairly straightforward. So like when I went to Barcelona in 2019, I spoke
Eh,
Portuñol.
but yo,
So I just threw in some like words in Portuguese with a Spanish-ish accent and prayed that like I was understood. And I went into a shoe shop in Barcelona and was able to actually buy a pair of
there you go.
shoes
There you go.
speaking my second-rate Spanish. So
That happened to me in Slovakia, right? I was in Slovakia with my wife a few months ago, and went into a store, and we kind of figured it out. They knew zero English for the records. We kind of had to do the
yeah.
Bosnian Slovakian and back and forth, and it went surprisingly well. So I'm very proud of that. I'm very happy to see that it works for you as well. But yeah,
Yes, yes, that's so super cool. Well, are you ready to get into some of our lightning round
yeah, for sure. Go.
questions? All right. Okay. Let's do this. Okay. Question number one. Are you left handed or right handed?
I am right-handed, so falling while skiing and hurting my left is not a problem. Only kind of like eating with like utensils is an issue because you kind of have to. I didn't. That was the problem. So I kind of have to do this old switcheroo. But yeah. So.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Next question. Do you prefer iPhone or
Oh,
Android?
I was a avid Android user up until when was it? Probably 2-3 years ago, and I switched everything over to Apple products, phone, MacBooks,
Oh,
the
wow.
headphones, earphones. Actually, I only have the Bose noise canceling headphones that aren't Apple. Everything else is basically Apple, which is why my wife hates it because she runs Android, so I can't airdrop her photos. So I need to have buy the family package iCloud. So I need to send her links. It's just, and she doesn't want an iPhone. She
Oh,
just
yeah,
doesn't
yeah,
want an
yeah.
iPhone, right? So yeah.
Yeah, I feel you. Yeah. Well, my sister is she's an iPhone user, but her husband is like an Android user. So then she's always like, I don't know how to get files over
Yeah.
to him. I'm like, Google Drive.
Right? And then she goes like, "Just send me on Viber." Like, why would you? It's like it destroys the photo if I send you a photo. We go to some beautiful place in freaking Dubrovnik where they did the Game of Thrones thing, and I take a picture. She just send me on Viber. Like, it's gonna destroy the photo. Like, it's freaking. And she doesn't get it. She's not an IT. Like, she doesn't get it. So yeah, it's just frustrating.
These are the issues that divide families. No, just kidding.
iCloud family solves everything, right?
Yeah. It's the age old battle. My husband and I converted to Mac. Geez, we were, I think, like 4 or 5 years married, and before that we're like, no Windows, no Mac, like Linux fine, but Windows or like whatever, right? And we were BlackBerry users, and Mac was like, ah. And then for funsies I got like it was a Mac Mini. It was, I think, one of the first years the Mac Mini came out, and they were like super cheap. I'm like, let's use this as a media server. And then we plug it in. I'm like, I don't know how to use this. And then for funsies, I'm like, I'm gonna get myself a MacBook Pro because it was like a Black Friday sale or whatever. Which, in Apple terms, Black Friday sales are like it's the saddest sale ever because like you're not getting a deep discount, but I'm like, ooh, discount on an Apple product. And then I started using my MacBook Pro, and I just bought myself like this Core i7 like Intel machine, like super beefed up, and I'm like, but I want to use my my Mac Pro, which isn't nearly as beefy and it's so beautiful. Like I just like that was kind of it for me. that converted me. From then on, it was like, yeah, I can't go
No,
back.
exactly. It's too good. It's just like just works.
Right? Yeah, it just works. I'm with you. Okay, next question. Similar vein. Mac, Windows, or
Oh,
Linux?
I was super into Linux up until I got my Mac. I was only running Linux, and I just switched to Mac when the M1 chip got released. So that was quite recent as well. So
Ooh.
I was running full on Linux
Yeah.
up until that. Absolutely hated Windows. Nothing against Microsoft. I think they're
Yeah.
great as a company and great with what they're doing. And Windows as a system is, I mean, it's perfectly fine. It's just I just couldn't. It was just so horrible. But yeah, no, it is Mac all the way right now.
I feel you. Yeah, and the M chips are like,
Oh yeah,
mwah.
oh yeah. It's just
When I went from my Intel Mac to my M1 Mac, I'm like, I don't hear a fan. My computer is not burning my lap. What's going on?
I'm still using the Air one, which is the small one without the fans, without the anything. And charge it. You charge
Yeah,
it like
yeah.
a phone. You plug it in overnight.
Oh yeah. The charger's like
You
tiny.
plug it in overnight. You take it off the charger in the morning. You use it all day. You get back home. You plug it in when you go to sleep, and it's just like, you never charge it. It's nuts.
Yeah. The M1 Mac Airs are so
Yeah,
pretty.
yeah,
It's like a little piece
yeah,
of jewelry for
yeah.
your desk.
And it goes with my very small hands. Like I have very ladylike hands, right? Like the palms super small, so it kind of fits nice, right? But I need to get a bigger one. I need to
Aw.
get like a proper one. It's getting a bit crowded with all of the Kubernetes stuff I need to run and demos and stuff. So yeah,
Oh
it's
yeah,
getting a
yeah,
bit.
yeah. Yeah, I feel you. I went for the 14-inch instead of the 16-inch M1 MacBook Pro, because like I just, even though I like the screen size on the 16-inch, like it's so much thicker compared to like the Intel Macs of the same size that I was like, and I had a 15-inch Intel Mac. I was like, holy crap, it just feels too big. So, but to each their own. That's my personal
Yeah, I'm actually not that
preference.
against them bringing back all of the ports. It's fine that it's a bit thicker with all those ports.
Oh
Because
yeah, it's
I'm right now
nice.
connected with a dongle that's massive and it's taking up a ton of space on my table with all of these microphones and whatnot. And it would just make more sense to just
Yeah.
have the jack. Like it's just like why not, right?
Yeah, I agree. It's nice having the HDMI back on the computer, and I think I have like an SD slot. Yeah,
Yeah.
looking over, I have an SD slot on my
Because I mean,
Mac.
you're a
It's like, oh,
podcaster, you
we're
need
back.
that, right?
I know, right? Yeah, it's true. It's true. Okay, next question. Favorite programming language?
Is JavaScript even a language, or is it all fake? What do you think?
Don't ask me about JavaScript. My opinions are as strong as like using Windows as like a
I mean,
primary
I,
machine.
I love JavaScript.
I don't want to offend anyone who likes either of those things. Just a personal preference.
I mean, I love it. I've used JavaScript for ages. I remember, you remember when Angular JS 1.0 was released, like Angular JS. That was like freaking 10 years ago now. That's when I used JavaScript
Yeah, like
on the front
we
end. So yeah, so
oh
I
wow.
am in JavaScript terms old. Like I was around when Node was 0.12. That's when I started using Node. So um, yeah.
Wow. That's old school. Dude, but I am older because like I remember when JavaScript came out before Angular and
Oh,
Node.
you're
Yeah,
pulling the OG
yeah.
card. Okay, okay. Okay.
I actually, and it was the OG JavaScript that like really turned me off from JavaScript, and then I ran away
Oh
screaming
no,
like,
jQuery
"No!"
was terrible. jQuery was the bane of my existence. It was
Oh my
horrible.
god. I vaguely remember jQuery. I just remember trying out a few things in JavaScript and being
Yeah.
like, no. Next, please. I'll go to backend development. Thank you. ran to my Java. Now, mind you, like Java had like a front end thing. I think it was called Swift, and it was like a piece of
Oh,
crap. Also ran
who
away
would
from
have thought that
that.
Java wouldn't be good in the front end?
What? Yeah, it was bulky and horrible, and yeah, yes. Okay, next question. Do you prefer dev or ops?
Ooh, tough one. Tough one.
Okay.
I do prefer dev. I do prefer dev, but I've been tightly linked to ops for 5 or so years, so it's a tough one. But still, I would still prefer dev. I don't mind doing the ops, but I think the automation part of ops I really like. The Kubernetes part of
Yes.
ops is painful. It's I'm not smart enough for that stuff. I swear to God, networking and all of those infra Kubernetes things, I'm definitely not smart enough for that.
Kubernetes is definitely a test of patience.
Yeah.
There's like so many aspects to it that I feel like, you can be really good in one area of it and okayish in in other areas, enough to be
Yeah,
dangerous kind of
yeah,
thing.
yeah, yeah. But then, I mean, there's so many tools. There are so many things that you need to know. I mean, I have a buddy, actually, my best man. He's been doing ops, so automation, and basically all things Kubernetes for years now. And dude, I ask him something, and dude pulls out an answer out of thin air, and then tells me something I've never heard about. And he goes like, says something like, "Did you taint?" Like, what the hell? What are you talking about? Like, I don't know. So it's like a tribal thing. Like, it's tribal knowledge, that stuff. I don't really know where people learn all that. So crazy.
I think it's usually like learning out of
Oh yeah.
necessity, I find. All my Kubernetes knowledge is learned out of necessity. Is like, I need to figure out this thing. But hey, it means that you basically have like a Kubernetes zombie apocalypse
Oh yeah.
friend, that if there's like the Kubernetes zombie apocalypse, you know who to call for help.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. He's he's the one. He's even the, what's it called? He works in a platform team, right? And the platform team is all just developer experience, performance,
Yeah,
reliability, uptime. So he's the person you call when shit hits the fan, I think.
that's awesome. Okay, next question. Do you prefer JSON or YAML?
Ooh, YAML, YAML,
YAML. Yeah,
YAML.
I'm team
I mean,
YAML
who
as
doesn't
well.
love YAML?
The JSON people. So many people
But
bitch about YAML, and yes, there are annoying things about YAML,
I
but I
like
still
to
prefer
call
it.
myself a full stack YAML developer. Yeah.
Yep, 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 yep. I feel ya. Lots of time buried in YAML. Okay, next question: spaces or tabs? Which one do you like better?
Ooh, it's a tough one because
Ooh.
I set up VS Code to do spaces, but I hit the tab and then it does the spaces.
Yes. Hey, that's how mine's set up
Yeah,
too. Yeah.
big brain moves.
Yeah, yeah. I used to be like all tabs, but I don't know. Like I feel like YAML kind of made me
Yeah,
do it.
yeah, it's too much.
you know like for some reason it was an incentive to like convert my tabs to spaces, that as you do, like you hit tab and it turns it into spaces. Magic. Okay, two more questions. Do you prefer to consume content through video or
Oh, text for
text?
sure. I mean, I don't mind videos. It's just that uh, it's either really long video. I mean, really long. What's really long nowadays? 10 minutes and above. Like
I know, right?
anything. Yeah,
TikTok nation.
like 3 minutes and above. People think it's long nowadays. I'd say 10 minutes
It's
and
true.
above that is probably videos that I like watching, just because of the content I can get out of it and learn from it. And then otherwise, just for day to day stuff, I would rather read a docs page. I would rather read a blog post than I would watch a video, which is, I've heard, pretty strange. People don't agree with me, so I might be, yes.
Really? That's so funny because so then I have a very interesting, like, I have a skewed population then on this podcast, because most of the folks I've asked this question to all lean towards text.
We're the old guard,
Yeah, I know, right?
born and raised before Facebook, before Instagram, TikTok.
I know. It's true. It's true. Yeah. Yeah. I know. Whenever I watch like old TV shows, and they're like, there's like no cell phones and they're like calling from a payphone. I'm like, just text them. Obviously, like very tongue in cheek comment, but I'm like, damn, we are used to things that, like, the things that we're used to now we take so much for
Oh
granted.
yeah, for sure.
Okay, final question. What is your superpower?
Ooh, my amazing sense of humor.
Dun dun
That's not. That's not.
dun.
That's. I don't. That was terrible. That was terrible. I don't really know. I would say. I am moderately funny. That would be it.
which is a good superpower because like you have to break the ice, right? Like especially when you're dealing with people, which you have
Oh
to as part of your
yeah,
job. And so being moderately funny to kind of like crack some exterior shells of
yeah. I
grumpiness
like listening as well.
when you're interacting with certain
Right.
people, I think
I
that's a
agree. I
skill.
agree. I also like listening. So I like hearing something interesting, and I'm very particular with the people I have in my friends group, where I generally like hearing something that I can relate to and also think about. So I like hearing that from people I don't know as well, because hearing something that you can think about and can motivate you, or you can just have that thought, oh, that's really cool. Let me brainstorm on that and then figure out something that can benefit myself from that, and then give feedback to the person and then have a conversation about that. I think that's where, especially for me, I like the listening aspect of that. I think that's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. Totally agree. All right, well, you survived the lightning round questions.
Yeah, yeah.
Give yourself a pat on the back.
It was not that bad. You told me
Hooray!
like, dude, it's gonna be hard. It was not that bad.
I didn't say it was going to be horrible. I some people get nervous. It's supposed to be an icebreaker. Okay, well, now that we've cleared the lightning round questions, why don't you tell folks about yourself? Like, what do you do?
Yeah, I mean, the quick rundown would be that I do developer relations. I've been doing developer relations for since it was called technology evangelism. So I've been doing it for a while. And yeah, I think it is awesome that I am quite literally an influencer for tech people, which is very,
Yes.
very strange. I'm not very good at influencing or influencing or whatever the word is. But yeah, I like talking to people. I like listening, and I like educating. And I think that was the reason why I moved into developer relations from being an engineer. So I was an engineer for what's that, almost half my career so far. Um, and yeah, and then was basically either do developer relations, which I ended up being very good at, or be a mediocre engineer. And I was like, yeah, let's kind of try being doing the thing where I'm actually kind of better instead of being kind of average as an engineer. So I said, yeah, what the hell? Why not? Let me try this. And yeah, and that was back when the Medium blog was taking off. They had just launched their, what's it called? They had publications and whatnot, and they just taking off. Right,
Oh yeah,
a
yeah.
free code camp was a thing back then. So I hosted I
Yes.
mean, it still is now, but back then when we were just starting out, I hosted they did all over the world. They had local groups that were doing meetups, events, education, teaching people, and I was doing a lot of in-person education as well, just teaching courses. As basically just because the startup I was doing early in my career was all focused on education as well, just like generating courses, just like Udemy, but for a smaller local market,
Yeah.
and that kind of fell through, and then I just started doing education myself, and then doing the free code camp thing, and then the Medium thing took off, and my blog on Medium just got crazy. I think it was, yeah, it took off so strangely that I got like 5,000 followers within less than a year, just because of free code camps
Damn.
publication taking off and publishing. Yeah, it
That's
was it
awesome.
was I didn't really know what to do. Like this 24-year-old kid just like having a Medium thing take off. So like, what the hell? So it was that was super fun. And then I did a lot of free code camp. Was leading the local free code camp community as well for a couple of years. And that was when I figured, well, this is kind of I'm like, this is fun. So I took a DevRel job, and yeah, I've been doing it ever since. And it's basically always been something in the observability, monitoring, log management, I'm going to say, space. I did some big data as well at one previous job, but it's always been something like this. That's, I'm going to say, a niche market that isn't really easy to figure out, and that requires a lot of handholding and a lot of help from the I'm going to say marketing, support, sales, and DevRel teams, especially for building
Yeah.
products. And I had a nice foundation in product development, because I had a startup early in my career, so I had that. I had a touch of, okay, so the code you're writing isn't really it doesn't make, it's not what you write and the code you write, it's the product that you generate. Nobody cares about the code.
Yeah.
People care about the product you're putting out, right? So I think that mindset early in my career helped me a lot with DevRel as well. And yeah, I'm carrying that with me. And I think that's the, if anybody asks me for advice regarding how to be good at developer relations, it's just, you have to put out a good product and you have to be the connection between the end user and your team that builds the product. And that's it. Like, it's, if you want to have product led growth, if you want to build a community, if you want to build the influence of you as a person, you need to have a product that people want to use. And you're the person that needs to tell people if it's usable or not. And by people, I mean your team, right? So I think that's the only golden rule, if there is any golden rule in developer relations, is you have to be very realistic. Like, I make jokes about us being
Yeah.
influencers and us doing popularity contests, and like we do OnlyFans for engineers. Like, it's all jokes. It's not. I'm not serious. Those are humor, like comedy, But truthfully, that's all. That's irrelevant. Truthfully, it's all about the product, and it's all about you figuring out a strategy to position the product in a way that makes sense, and for you to position yourself as somebody in the industry that is influential to talk about the industry or the thing your product is doing, right? So yeah, this
Yeah.
got super serious super quickly.
But I think you make a really good point, because like being in developer relations, like you have to build trust between your audience and between you and your audience, right? And so they have to know that you're not like just some sleazy ass salesperson who's just trying to sell them on a product. They need to believe that like you have something interesting to say, and that, oh, by the way, I represent this product as well, and because they like what you have to say, I feel kind of it naturally gravitates towards, oh, I'll take a look at what they do, kind of thing, right? So I do feel like there's a little bit of that. I think basically making a connection with your intended audience, right, makes a huge difference. Like, this is not the job for people who are extremely introverted, or introverts who have who have no desire to put on an extroverted face for for a limited period of time every day, kind of thing, right?
Yeah. I mean, and also the core, or the root of our job, developer relations, it started as sales engineering at I don't know, Microsoft, or where was it? It started as sales engineering 15 years ago, where they figured out engineers don't really want to listen to salespeople, so they took engineers, made them into
Yeah.
salespeople, and then they figured that
Yeah.
worked back then, and then how it evolved, it didn't really work, and then they figured out the evangelist role, or the technology evangelist role, which was a thing 10 years ago when I first heard about it, and then that kind of stopped working because evangelist is nobody knows what the hell you're doing. One time, one lady asked me if I do churches. Like, I swear to God, she's like, "Oh, I was like, what do you do?" I was like, "I'm a technology evangelist." "Oh, so you do like church?" I was like, "No, no, I don't do the church. Like, what the hell?" And I was like, "Oh, probably that's the problem. That's why they changed it. Doesn't really make sense." Advocate, like
Oh
developer
my god,
relations and
it's so
developer
funny.
advocate, kind of sounds more normal, I'm gonna say. Um, but
Yeah, that's so funny. I would have never thought that, but I think us being in tech, it's not something that we would have necessarily associated with like church.
but she was super
But
serious. She
hey,
was, "Oh, you
I
do the
could
church?" I was like, "No."
I could see how that.
Um,
Yeah, and you were saying that you're working in an area that's fairly niche, right? Like observability, and it's definitely one of those areas that has expanded a fair bit in the last several years, which is super exciting. Like observability is near and dear to our hearts, because I think it's really the part of it's an evolutionary step in SRE, right? You can't be a good SRE these days without having a properly observable system. So it's very exciting what's happening in the space now. So many different innovations, and especially like where you work, right? With Tracetest, I think is very exciting because of the nature of what you guys do. If you can talk a little bit
yeah,
about
for
that.
sure. I mean, doubling down on that, observability as a space is massive. I mean, just take a look at Datadog and their IPO. Like, what, it's just that alone is insane with regards to how much it's needed in our industry. We're not really building monoliths anymore. Like 20 years ago, not having intricate monitoring and observability tooling was okay. Like it was fine. Now, what are we building nowadays? Do you think Netflix is thousands and thousands of services that are all interconnected? They need to communicate. They need to do something, and they're all doing it together. How do you fix that if it's broken? Like, so that's the thing. Observability now is, I'm going to say, at the birthplace of where it's going to be 10 years from now. OpenTelemetry right now, it's getting to that stable state where it's available to actually use reliably in production. More and more of the libraries are stable. More and more, I'm going to say, both the metrics and logs, not just the tracing libraries, are also getting to a stable state. And a lot of the tooling around the observability space is defaulting to use OpenTelemetry libraries and OpenTelemetry as the standard for both ingesting data, collecting, generating, and all that fancy words that we all know. And I love that. And that's where I'm thinking we are generating huge amounts of data with traces, with distributed tracing, because of our systems being distributed. So we need to use distributed tracing to actually get a context of what the hell is happening in our system. An API call isn't really an API call with 200 it works. An API call is an API call that calls a queue, that calls a message bus, that calls a cache, that calls a database. Those are 7 different steps in one API call. So it's not really just an API call that you need to have visibility into and see what's happening. That's when I'm seeing that people are only using all of that data currently for production environments, for figuring out when their users have problems and how to circle back to their engineering teams to actually know exactly what went wrong, which is awesome. But that's just step 1 in that whole cycle. We're talking about DevOps. We're talking about that new principle of DevOps, where we have a cycle of, we have the developer pushing code to the ops person, and then the ops person pushes his back because they have observability to tell the developer what's going wrong. But that cycle isn't complete without the testing part. And that's where Tracetest, where I'm working right now, we're building a tool that taps into that DevOps cycle, where you're using the observability, so the distributed tracing and all of that telemetry you get from your system, from OpenTelemetry and whatever tracing backends you're using, ranging from Datadog to Sumo Logic to all of the fancy big ones, to ServiceNow as well. And you're tapping into that data to run your integration testing, your end-to-end testing, your UI testing with all of these. So you're basically enhancing all of the tests you already have. So that's what I think is super cool with Tracetest, is that it doesn't just give you the test tool to tap into OpenTelemetry and run test specs on the trace data itself, which means that you can basically run a test on every single part of your transaction that an API makes. So you can say, oh, I want to make sure that this external API call returned 200. And there's no freaking way I can do that with any test tool right now. Like, I have to mock stuff and I have to kind of fake stuff out. I need to figure out how it works. And I spend days on that. Instead of, let me ping the API, get real data from the trace. I write my specs on that data. That's real data. And I put that in my CI. And you're done, right? You already have the data. Like, freaking use it, right? I think that's
exactly.
that's the magical part, where we're already generating all of that data. You're already keeping the data. Use it for testing as well. And I think that's where the next, I'm going to say next groundbreaking step in this DevOps cycle is going to be, where test tools are just lagging behind. So we need to figure something out. And yeah, hopefully Tracetest is gonna fill that gap, fill the shoes, or whatever we want to say.
Yeah. And I think that's what I love the most about the idea of trace-based testing is, like, you're already emitting traces. Like, just take advantage of the data. You have data, as you said, like, use it. And the other thing that you mentioned, which I think is something that it seems so obvious when you say it, but it's not something that we're in the habit of doing yet, which is like viewing observability as part of the SDLC, because everyone's like, oh, it's, part of an SRE practice. Absolutely. But, like, you can't have an observable system if you don't instrument your code. Where does application instrumentation come from? During development. And therefore, it means that observability starting way earlier in the SDLC than, we care to admit, right? And so like shifting those conversations in that direction, I think will be very important really for organizations to really make the most out of um, observability, right? For starters, there's like so many different aspects, but instrumentation, like getting into the habit of instrumenting your code, and admitting that it starts earlier, I think is so
Yeah, and I
important.
think the main thing that people can think of from a logical point of view is that we've been instrumenting with logs for decades.
Or,
Like
yeah,
and nobody's. I don't see anybody complaining. Oh my god, I have to add logging. It's just normal. Like, why is tracing
yeah, yeah,
and instrumenting your code? Why is that any different? Like the logical aspect of that is the exact same, with one addition where you have this context that propagates.
yep.
And if you use OpenTelemetry,
That ties
exactly
everything
right.
together. Heaven
And you're
forbid.
using OpenTelemetry libraries anyway, so it just does it automatically. You don't really
Yeah,
have to be like you can
yeah,
be an average engineer as and I can make it work, right? So it's not rocket science. The people that made OpenTelemetry, the maintainers, they're the rocket scientists. You can just drive the rockets. You don't really need to think about how it works, right?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm definitely very excited, and I think like when Tracetest came on the market, I think one of the predecessors was Malabai, that I think was created by Aspecto, and that was just for JavaScript, like code written in JavaScript. It's really cool that like now we've got a tool like Tracetest that is language agnostic, because and it makes sense, right? Because OpenTelemetry, you can instrument your code using OpenTelemetry in so many different languages, so it makes sense that it's not like restricted to one particular language, because that way we take that full advantage of the uh, of being able to really like instrument across microservices that are written in different languages, right? Like you said, you don't have to
Yeah.
futz around with like different like mocking and different libraries, like different testing libraries for different languages. It's like we all speak the same language, and it's called
And that's the
OpenTelemetry.
thing where a lot of the bottlenecks when testing is just it takes too much time. We can't really see value from all of the time that we need to put into it. Then you have the blocker of, oh, I need to know JavaScript for whatever Jest Ava or whatever testing tool I need. Oh, I need to use Python for whatever test tool I need to use for Python. And then is JUnit or whatever Java. So
Yeah,
you're zoned in and you're kind of blocked off. You're siloed into that environment versus with using trace-based testing and using testing in general with distributed tracing with trace test is that you like it doesn't care about the language, it only cares about the trace. So triggering the test itself, trace test handles that through a definition that you define. The definition could be YAML. You can just click it in the UI, and it triggers a test for you. You get the traces back, and then you create your specs based on the traces. Now, these specs, they're language agnostics as well, because they're generated with I'm going to say selector language, which is very similar to CSS. So you basically select the span that you want to test. You say, I want this span to be equal to 200. I want this span to have a duration less than 200 milliseconds or whatever else test spec you want to add, and that's it, right? And then based on that, if you want to integrate with any of your existing integration, I'm going to say integration testing tools, if you want to trigger from Cypress, you can do that as well, because we have this concept of a trigger where the trigger can be anything from an HTTP request, a gRPC request, a Cypress test, a Playwright test, a K6 load test. So basically anything externally that you're already using can initiate a trace test, trace-based test as well. So whatever you're using for whatever front-end testing, UI testing, integration testing, load testing, or whatever type of testing you're using, you can add trace test to your integration testing. I'm going to say testing harness, and it's just going to work perfectly fine. And that's what I like about it, because the only integration points you need to care about is, okay, so trace test needs access to your traces, which are kept in Jaeger,
mhm.
Grafana, whatever you're using. And then it just needs to trigger your app. So that's the only integration point. If you have Cypress, you can trigger it with Cypress. If you have K6, you can do it with K6. So I like that modularity and that flexibility of you can literally add it however you want, and it only cares about the trace, and it just works.
That's awesome. And the other thing worth mentioning is that Tracetest was integrated with the OpenTelemetry Demo recently, right? Like last fall, I want to say, like just before KubeCon North
Yeah. It
America.
was a couple of months ago where I think it was one or two of the maintainers. I can't remember. I think it was Pierre and Juliano. I actually met Juliano in person in Vienna at the KCD Austria. It was recently. I think it was before KubeCon in Chicago. Lovely guy, by the way. Shout out Juliano, is awesome. And yeah, and we had a great talk about the addition of traces to the demo. And it was basically him saying, "Oh, I literally broke the demo. I'm a maintainer. The tests passed. I merged the PR and I broke it, and I'm the maintainer. So I know how traces work. I'm very well versed in
Yeah.
how it works. I know the ins and outs of the system. So I'm supposed to know how the system works as well. But I still managed to break it, and I still managed to break it with passing tests." So that was a worrying, pretty worrying factor there. And that's when we started chatting through the GitHub issues, and we said, yeah, well, I mean, let's try it, let's add it in, see how it works, add some integration tests,
Yeah.
and then we did, and it's right now in the OpenTelemetry demo under the test directory under Tracetest. You can check out every single service in the demo has a dedicated set of tests and a test suite that runs basically on every PR. If I'm not mistaken, right now I think they did add that. Or is it only on merges? But yeah, it's in the demo if you want to take a look. What's also super cool is that as a spin-off of that, we did the CNCF live. What's it called? I think Cloud Native Live team. We did a webinar. Whitney Lee and myself. We did a webinar just workshop showing how it works. So if you actually want to see me actually coding that, you can check that out on the CNCF Cloud Native Live podcast as well. Otherwise, just jump over to the demo. Yeah, I
That's so
mean,
cool.
easiest way for people to do it.
Yeah, I'll include that in the show notes. Yeah, I saw you posted that on LinkedIn. I was like,
Yeah,
damn, that's so cool.
I didn't
Very
know they
exciting.
posted that on the landing page for OpenTelemetry. So that was quite humbling experience.
Yeah, that's very cool. Yeah, it's so nice to see. Like, I think the integration of Tracetest in the OpenTelemetry demo, and for those who aren't familiar, the OpenTelemetry demo is based on like the Google Hipster Shop, and it's basically the idea is to showcase like what OpenTelemetry can do in kind of a complex-ish sort of multi-microservice scenario written in different with microservices written in different languages. So it is not a simple application. There are a lot of moving parts. It's it and you can get it set up like without too much effort, I would say, locally, like using Docker Compose, or if you're feeling adventurous in Kubernetes. And so it's really cool that to be able to integrate trace-based testing through Tracetest in the OpenTelemetry demo, because again, it's another piece of the puzzle, right? That's being put in, right? It really showcasing like all the cool things that you can do with traces. It's not just for troubleshooting your production code. It is also for troubleshooting,
Development code,
your development cycle, which is super
which
super
is, I mean, it's
exciting.
normal. We've
Um,
done test driven development for
yeah,
years. I mean, come on, it's not a new thing. We're just, because of the complexity of the systems we have now, we're adding tracing to figure out what's happening. I mean, if we're already adding tracing to figure out what's happening in our development cycle, let's use that in the development cycle to also do the tests during development, and then also integrate those tests in your CI, which is, I mean, it just makes sense for me. I'm not quite sure how else to put it.
yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. It's one of those no brainers. I think whenever someone comes up with a simple solution, and what's simple when people are like, oh yeah, that makes so much sense. Why didn't I think of that before? Well, there you
Yeah.
go. Then that's when you know that this was the right thing to do, right?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And yeah, the demo is really really awesome. Um, I think it was Daniel from our team who wrote a super I'm gonna say detailed blog post on how he actually added trace test to the demo, to the OpenTelemetry demo. So that might also
Right.
be a nice just a reference point for people that want to get started, because it's a nice reference point, because if they want to actually contribute to the demo and try it themselves, checking that blog post will actually make sure that they run the tests correctly, and that they're any change they make, they actually won't break the demo on merging.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's such a really great idea. Because I think I'm a strong believer that if you want to contribute to open telemetry, like there's so many like you don't have to boil the ocean. You don't have to like, oh, I've got to be a contributor on like the SDK or API or whatever. Like it's something as simple as like there's something in the open telemetry demo where like maybe there's like a feature request open. You can take that on in a language that tickles your fancy. Such a great way to get started with contributing to open telemetry. And now having like something to make I guess the testing a little less scary, or at least like to help you understand like if you break the application, like why that happened. I think having the trace based tests integrated in with it can be such a
Yeah,
relief, if you will, because it's like, okay, I
yeah,
know where to
yeah.
look. I see what's going
And
on.
it's such a thing
So it's
where
not like
you
panic.
also get just system overview. When you run a test, you go,
Hmm.
oh, okay, so this API is going to touch all of these parts of my system, and then I actually know what it's touching. And if I know what it's touching, I know actually how to go in and either improve it, fix it, or run another test after I'm done with my development cycle. So it's just, I don't know. It's if you're new to a project, or if you're an open source contributor, you have no idea how that stuff works. You're just kind of
So
trying to
true.
read the documentation, trying to look at the architecture, trying to figure out what API does what, and then you end up breaking something, and then you don't have a test for it to make sure that you know that it's broken. It's just a nightmare, right? And then let alone if you think about,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, nowadays with remote companies, people working all over the globe, you have distributed teams, you have teams of, I don't know, 8 to 10 people work. I mean, there. How do I know what my colleague on the other side of the world is doing in another team, and whether that's, it's just nuts, right? You need to have a way of having a reliable architecture overview when you're running your development. So your development cycles need to have a very very nice systematic overview, and then your tests need to cover the happy paths of all of that, all of the architecture that your system uh, is. I mean, it's just freaking. I don't know. I think it's the future, more or less.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And as a final plug for like the power of trace-based testing, like, in theory it makes sense, but to be able to actually see it in practice in a complex scenario, cuz like, when I first played around with trace tests, and I think I played around with trace tests when it was like barely out. I think it came out, I want to say like May
Yeah. Yeah.
2022, and I was like, let's get this to run in Nomad for fun. So it was like I got a little example working on my own. I'm like, cool. But then my next thought was like, how does this work in like a complex scenario, right? So being able to see it work in a complex scenario, I think is like very opening, and like really shows the power of trace-based testing, and what it can do for you,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly. Exactly. And yeah, I mean, the roadmap right now is pretty extensive. So we have a lot of cool ideas that we want to start implementing. But yeah, the I'm going to say the K6 and the Cypress things, integrations regarding the triggering, those have been, for me at least, super super exciting. I'm going to say most exciting, just because it's finally, we're getting true end-to-end testing. Finally, it's your UI
Yeah,
test
yeah.
is generating traces from your browser that then triggers your backend, that's then generating traces across your entire backend. So you have a end-to-end test that covers your entire path of everything, right? and that's not something I've seen
Yeah.
anywhere before, right? So that's going to be a really cool thing once people start using it. We just basically released it a couple of days ago. We did our announcement webinar yesterday, by the way, for the Cypress integration.
Oh, very
Yeah,
fresh.
it is
Very
toasty fresh.
cool.
So yeah,
Very nice. Hot out of the
exactly.
oven.
Yeah, I'm just waiting to get people to start using it. I'm thinking it's going to be super cool.
Very nice. Well, we are coming up on time, but before we sign off, I was wondering if there's any like parting words of wisdom you would like to share with our audience.
Yeah. Wisdom. Well, I'm not great on wisdom. Humor is probably.
Oh, how about a joke?
Oh, no. They're way too dark. They are way too dark.
Tell a bad
Oh,
joke.
they're way too grim. Let's do parting wisdom. Work out, do stuff that you like when you're not working, and work becomes easy.
Yes. I
If you're
really like
not,
that. As a fellow workout fan, I fully
yeah,
support
definitely,
that.
definitely, because we're sitting around for most of the day, right? If you don't do something for, either in the morning or after work, or even during your work break, or whatever you want to call
In
it, in
between.
between, do CrossFit,
Yeah.
weightlifting, strength training, bouldering, biking, ice hockey, whatever you guys in Canada do. I don't know what you guys in Canada do. Probably ice hockey. You probably skate to work. Ice skate to work. I swear to God.
Not with the weather like here in Toronto. It's been like 4 Celsius.
But yeah, that's the gist of it. Figure something out.
But yeah, I guess hockey is the
Oh
thing
yeah.
in Canada. I am a terrible ice skater.
What?
Yeah, it is. I know. I know. I mean, I can get from A to B and mostly
Well, I'm a
stop.
terrible skier, as you can see. 1-1, eh?
There you go. Dun, dun. There you go. Oh yeah, and you said you're a good skater,
Yeah,
right?
I've been skating since I was like 3 years old. So skating is good, but skiing
Oh damn.
totally different. I like when you do the crossovers,
Damn.
when you're ice skating. Because my muscle memory is
Oh yeah,
still
yeah.
ice skate muscle memory with my. I
Oh no,
tried
were you trying to do
tried
that
doing it on
skiing?
skis. I
Oh shit.
freaking I like face planted and just slid
Um,
through the snow. It was not nice. It was not nice.
yeah. Believe it or not, I'm a better skier than an
There you
ice
go.
skater. I went through a skiing phase, but I haven't skied for
Dude,
a very
I'm
long time.
just
So.
waiting for the weekend because it's gonna be cold again. So I'm just gonna drive up to the mountains and do some skiing.
Oh, nice. See, you have snow. Toronto is like, I don't know, like the rest of Canada is getting like pummeled with snow, and we're like kind of in this little like island of like where everyone else gets snow, we get
Mm.
rain. So I'm like, it doesn't
At
even feel
least it's
like
not
winter.
Vancouver.
Yeah.
Vancouver is super sad.
Yeah, is it cold there? I don't even. Yeah, it's gotten cold right in Vancouver, which is like also unusual for this time of year. For Vancouver, it's like rain. We're getting
Yeah.
Vancouver weather. Yeah. Well, and on that fun note, well, thank you so much, Adnan, for geeking out with me today. Y'all don't forget to subscribe and be sure to check the show notes for additional resources and to connect with us and our guests on social media. Until next time.
Peace out and geek out.
Geeking Out is hosted and produced by me, Adriana Vilela. I also compose and perform the theme music on my trusty clarinet. Geeking Out is also produced by my daughter, Hannah Maxwell, who incidentally designed all of the cool graphics. Be sure to follow us on all the socials by going to bento.me/geekingout.